On today's show, the Atlanta Hawks get an overtime victory at home, stopping a losing skid and actually getting on track and winning a close basketball game. We'll get into all of what transpired in this one and more, and all that is on the way.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1629 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you deep into the night here on a Wednesday evening into Thursday. And today's show is brought to you by the folks at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And the place to go is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use promo code LockedOnNBA for first deposit match up to $100. Check it out now at PrizePicks. And also, make us your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Hawks podcast. Please subscribe to the show and check us out on Apple or Spotify on the audio side, as well as YouTube on the video side. And today's show, we'll get into what became a nice win for the Hawks, actually. A nice change of pace. They won a close game, 139-132 at home against the Sixers in overtime. Ironically, the Hawks have played three overtime games this year. And two of them are in the last two games. Of course, they lost the overtime game on Sunday down in Orlando, and they win this one at home. They snapped a two-game losing streak in the process where they kind of have wavered a little bit. Of course, this year, they improved to only 15-21, I should say. Not what anybody wants at this point. We all kind of know that at this, if you're following the Hawks closely and listening to this podcast, but still a nice victory. And yes, Joel Embiid did not play for the Sixers, which certainly levels the playing field considerably in this matchup, and it was not very easy at any point. In fact, neither team in this game led by more than 8 points. It was a single-digit game the entire way for 53 minutes. The Hawks were actually down by 4 points with under a minute to go in regulation and came back to forced overtime. They were down by 3 points in overtime. They had to make some plays. And this year, that's been a theme that they've not just made any of those plays late in games. This time around, it, again, wasn't flawless, but they got enough of that done, and they won a game that they have not won a lot of this year. So, as we always do on the podcast, we'll kind of dive into kind of the bigger takeaways of what was my observations in this game, my analysis, etc. And yes, the Hawks were favored in this game by 1 point, according to our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, because Embiid was out along with Robert Covington. But Atlanta was also shorthanded in this game, which we'll talk about more later on in the podcast. But offensively, look, it wasn't perfect. This is a team that's good offensively in general, but it was very good. They had some lulls. The second quarter was certainly a spot that was a sore one for Atlanta's offense. They had a 123 offensive rating in the game. And that means they scored more than 1.2 points every time they had the ball in this game on average. And they made plays when they kind of had to late in the game. They didn't shoot the ball well from three-point range. They were okay, 35% on moderate volume, not great. They also shot very poorly at the rim in this game, which was kind of a surprise because they got to the rim a lot. Joel Embiid was not there, of course, and Philadelphia was left without kind of their primary rim protector and what they funneled their defense to. But the Hawks actually shot poorly percentage-wise at the rim, but they found other ways to be efficient, and they kind of plowed through it in a positive direction. One of the big things, actually, in this game is that they had 42 free throw attempts. That is a season high for Atlanta. That's a ton for anyone, but certainly, obviously, season high speaks for itself when you're talking about a team that's now played 36 games this year. They didn't shoot great at the line, actually. They missed 11 free throws, 74% from the line, which is not terrible and not great either. But they got there a lot, and that helps their efficiency. I actually asked Quinn post-game about this. He talked about that, also pivoted the question a little bit, but I want to play that for you now. So here is my question to Quinn Snyder about the free throw line and also kind of what he had to say about that and other things.
You got to the line 42 times in this game, and also a lot of attempts at the rim. Was that a point of emphasis, especially with Embiid out? Was it just attacking downhill as the mindset?
Yeah, I think, when we're playing our best basketball, the ball's touching the paint. And at the same time, if we have, kick-aheads for early threes, we want to take those. But when we break the defense down and get in the paint, I thought we did a great job tonight of keeping our feet and not turning the ball over when we got in there. I don't know how many turnovers we had on the game. But that's against a team that leads the league in forcing turnovers. If you are driving the ball, some of those interior passes for us have been deflected at times. So, yeah, you want to drive the ball, and I thought our guys did a good job. I thought it was a physical game, particularly in the first half, and I thought we did a good job of keeping our composure, and adjusting to the way the game was being called, and that paid off as the game went along.
So from there, the Hawks actually also had fantastic ball security. Now, Quinn mentioned that in his answer that you just heard, but just to kind of give you the numbers, they had 13 turnovers in this game in 53 minutes. So overtime game, 13 giveaways in the entire game. 7 of those actually were in the second quarter alone, which is bad for any quarter. But the rest of the game, they had 6 turnovers in 41 minutes, and that is excellent against anyone. Also 32 assists, but the reason I'm bringing that up now, as Quinn kind of talked about a little bit in that answer, is that Philadelphia, number one, is fantastic at creating turnovers this year. And yes, Embiid is like kind of part of that. And most of that, Embiid is like the rim protector. What they do on the perimeter is more of the turnover creation aspects. Philadelphia plays very physically on defense. And honestly, they were allowed to play that way in this game a lot. It's actually crazy the Hawks took this many free throws because there were probably another, I don't even know what to put a number on it, but a lot more opportunities the Hawks probably could have gotten to the line in this game. But I thought the Hawks, as Quinn was kind of talking about, like it's a huge plus to not turn the ball over against this Philadelphia team. And I would say it isn't a coincidence that the Hawks had their worst offensive quarter in the quarter where they couldn't take care of the ball. The rest of the game, took care of it, got shots to the rim, and that was very effective. And by the way, when they actually took shots, they were very good on the glass offensively. They took advantage of Philadelphia's lack of size. They were playing a little bit smaller without Embiid in this game. That combination of offensive rebounding and ball security won the possession battle overall. The Hawks took more shots overall in this game, and that usually is a good sign for your fundamentals. And from there, just really good balance from the offense. Now, it's not always about like points scored when it comes to balance, but in this game, it kind of was pretty illustrative, I think, of like what it was. So, in short, without Capella and Hunter in this game, the Hawks had 6 guys that I would describe as like their core 6 guys that were available. They kind of have a pretty clear top 8. And yes, they have young guys that are not in that group right now as far as playing every game, like Buffkin and Lundy and Griffin, etc. But the 8 guys that the Hawks currently have on their roster that they are very comfortable playing, they had 6 of those guys available in this game. It was Okongwu, Bay, Johnson, Young, Murray, and Bogdanovich. All 6 of those guys had 15 points or more in this game. So that kind of tells you the balance they had. They had 3 guys with 25 points or more, DeJounte, Trey, and Jalen Johnson. They were very effective across the board here. And we'll talk about Jalen's big night later on, but even the bench guys gave them good minutes in this game. I thought Quinn talked about that as well. I won't play that audio for you, but he talks about just how hard the bench guys played, and I definitely would agree with that, having watched this game. So offensively, not a masterclass, but certainly pretty good. And then defensively, as to sort of talk about like the fact that the bench guys, like in particular Trent Forrest, has a bigger impact on defense and offense, but defensively, it was pretty solid in this game. It wasn't perfect. If you adjust for Embiid not being there, no one should celebrate a 117 offensive rating for the Sixers being allowed by the Hawks. I'm not telling you that they were perfect on defense in this game. They weren't. There were some moments, as we'll talk about later on, where they had some really bad breakdowns, in particular like off the ball, allowing back cuts, etc. It's been a problem all year long. But they won the glass overall. They did allow a lot of free throw attempts in this game, but less than Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, by the way, is number 1 in the league in free throw creation. So holding them, not necessarily in check, but like winning that battle was important. And then also, yes, Tyrese Maxey had 35 points in this game. He was their primary option. But he had 35 points on 34 shooting possessions. So he wasn't super efficient, which helps. As a team, Philadelphia shot 45% from the field. That's pretty good. So aside from a couple of moments in the third quarter that were pretty glaringly bad, Saddiq Bey struggled. I thought defensively he was the only one, bogey 2. But they did enough in this one. So I'll stop rambling. But I do think it was generally speaking, a really solid win. I don't want to go overboard talking about how they played great because they were favored in this game. I tip off that was reasonable to be without Embiid. And if you take take Embiid away from Philadelphia, they're not a great team by any means. But the Hawks were down 2 starters as well. It wasn't like they were playing at full strength here either. And a nice win. And again, I don't want to overstate it, but certainly this is kind of the flow of a game that the Hawks have had not a lot of success in this year, and they won this one. And that is kind of the top line thought in this spot. We'll have more on this coming up in a second, as we always do as far as the game flow is concerned. But first, a word from our sponsors on the show today. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS right now. At PrizePicks, all you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players and then choose whether to have more or less than a projection and a ton of different categories across sports. What up to 25 times the money's on your entries? That's always very solid to have as an opportunity. And they have combo projections across sports as well. It can include 2 or more players from different sports or different leagues together. And they have a huge selection of sports not offered anywhere else. Also, stat types and sort of the variation there, the variance is a lot of fun to kind of dive through what's even available at PrizePicks. They have the NBA, of course, NFL, NHL, PGA, and much more. And they have a reboot policy at PrizePicks. In fact, they're the only DFS platform with an injury insurance policy. I've enjoyed checking out PrizePicks for quite some time now. I dig into the NBA stuff every day, NFL stuff as well. The playoffs coming up this weekend. On the whole, the experience is fantastic at PrizePicks. It's easy, it's fun, I recommend it, and it's really a user-friendly experience, top to bottom. And the place to go is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use promo code LockedOnNBA when you get there for a first-time deposit match up to $100 with PrizePicks. One more time, the place to go is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use promo code LockedOnNBA when you get there. Check out DFS made easy with PrizePicks. All right, so as I mentioned, nothing was ever like breezy in this one. It was kind of a slog of a game. I might repeat that later on, but in case I don't, it was never comfortable. It was kind of never really a super flowy game. Like lots of stoppages, lots of free throws, lots of whistles, lots of reviews, challenges, etc., etc. There were some Trae Young passes, including one at the very beginning of the game, actually, to Okongwu. It was a great pass. And the offense was crisp from the Hawks most of the night, as I mentioned before. 18 points in the first 5 minutes, a good start there. I want to stop now, though, talk about like the rotation, who was available in this game. I talked about it before a little bit, that the Hawks had only 6 of their top 8 guys. Of course, Hunter's been out for a while. He's still out. Capella missed this game with Achilles soreness. Quinn indicated pregame that the team is not expecting anything long-term on Capella, which is obviously a good sign. I was actually the one to ask that question. I argued last night, actually, on my Patreon and also on Twitter, that I would sit Clint Capella if there was any sort of doubt, given the way that this team sets up against the Embiid-less Sixers. Also, the schedule. The Hawks, this actually started the stretch of 4 games in 6 nights for Atlanta. And they're all at home, but still, that's pretty grueling. And Philadelphia playing smaller without Embiid. Like, it was a perfect night if there was any doubt. Like, you don't have to rest him for no reason. But once Capella was on the injury report, I was like, all right, give him the night off. And that made sense. Obviously, there's some issue there and a question. And he's had some Achilles issues in the past, but hopefully he's back on Friday. And they will probably need him more in certain matchups. But it was a good night to rest him. I'm glad I did that. Also, on this front, an update came down on Hunter and Garrison Matthews, both of whom have injury updates that were official earlier this week. Hunter, the Hawks announced, is going to actually started doing half-court work later in the week last week. And then there is a, quote, increase in basketball activities, end quote, upcoming. No timeline, so that's a little bit uncertain and weird, but he's getting closer and closer, it seems like. Garrison Matthews has that left ankle sprain that he suffered on Sunday. They're going to reevaluate him in 1 to 2 weeks, so he won't be out a ton, but probably at least that whole homestand, I would imagine he will not be playing. And I know not a huge loss, but he's a guy that, as I sort of noted on Twitter today, he had played in every game that Hunter had missed in the last 8 games. He had played all of them, so Garrison has been like their 8th or 9th man for a while now, and he was not available in this game. Also, by the way, Kobe Buffkin did not play tonight in College Park. He actually has a back injury after landing pretty hard after a hard fall in a recent Skyhawks game before tonight. So, with that out of the way, lots of stuff there, but they were shorthanded in this game. And I was a little bit uncertain as to who was going to play in the rotation beyond the top 6. It was Trent Forrest, and of course, Bruno was the backup center, which makes sense. That was kind of the obvious choice. Trent Forrest, though, and Patty Mills. In the second half, it was actually just Forrest, which I was fine with. I like what they have done with Trent in recent days. Now, I'm higher on him than most, but also against teams like Indiana, teams that, like Philly tonight, that have a high usage guard, Trent is their best defender on the roster, in my opinion, on smaller guards. And that meant guarding Tyrese Maxey in this game, which he definitely did and did well and played well. Hawks were up 3 at the end of the first quarter. They didn't shoot it well as they did the entire game. They were attacking early on. Okongwu had a big start to the game with 11 points in the first 5 minutes, something like that. Kind of a slog. Philly had a pretty big run in the middle of the second quarter. The Hawks actually started slowly from 3. They were 1 of 9. Trae had a very rough stint in the second quarter in particular. And that was the quarter, by the way, that the Hawks had the 7 turnovers in the quarter. The Hawks sort of landed a counterpunch with an 8-0 run after a couple of threes by Trae and DeJounte. It was a weird final minute. The Hawks got a technical foul for a delay of game, and then Trae got another one for kind of arguing it maybe, or clapping at the official, whatever. That was his 8th tech of the season, so he's halfway to a suspension. Keep that in mind for later in the season. Then Jalen threw the ball away in the last 5 seconds to give up a dunk. So not a great ending to the quarter, let's just say, to the half, before halftime. But they were still down only 3. It was still kind of weirdly officiated in the third quarter. I don't want to make too much of this, but it was a rough officiated game. Not just Hawks stuff either. Like, they quick whistles on technical fouls, not consistently, in my opinion, all the way through. Saddiq Bey went down hard, and Trey tried to foul to stop play. He got called for a take foul, which was an absurd play because it wasn't like an advantage for Philadelphia. They were not running on a fast break. It was just a strange. There just wasn't a lot of control from the officials, I will say. Okongwu kind of pulled a Capella at one point in the third quarter, actually. He got a nice pass from Jalen Johnson and kind of just didn't go up with it right away. And he kind of dribbled into trouble in a way that Clint sometimes does. I thought it was kind of an interesting parallel. And they missed Clint in some ways in this game. I thought Clint would have been better than Bruno was in particular, but Okongwu was very good, which is notable. Quinn challenged a foul on Trey. Not the most high-leverage play in the world, but Trey and the whole team really was kind of getting frustrated with the officials. I thought it was a good idea to kind of challenge that, not only because it was the right call and they kind of won the challenge, but also just to back Trey up. But it was kind of weird in that Quinn, quote-unquote, won the challenge, but it's hard to explain if you haven't seen the play, but the officials ruled that it was continuation for Maxey, and it was a goaltend. So actually, the Hawks ended up losing 2 points despite winning the challenge. Bizarre. Anyway, it didn't bite them, but it kind of did in some ways because they went to overtime in this one. Also, some free throw issues, as I mentioned before. They were missing them a bunch at the line. Dead even in the third quarter. It was better offensively, but in the fourth, we kind of flopped through this a little bit here. A nice 10-2 run by the Hawks to open the fourth quarter up. Bogey had it going. Trent Forrest had it going with a nice layup and transition. Also another corner 3 by Jalen Johnson. It didn't matter, but Bruno had one of the funnier uncalled moving screens that I have seen in a long time. You have to watch it on the film, but he's essentially just full-on pass blocking, and I had a good laugh about that watching it. It was obviously helpful for the Hawks because it worked, but it was kind of funny. They're up 5 mid-quarter. Bay actually made a corner 3 at a big time, which he's not done a great job with those this year. Acknowledging that, though, I would not have closed with Saddiq, as I said during the game a couple times on social media. I think Bogey would have been better for me to close. Now, I'll stop here and say this. I think, or at least I suspect, this has not been confirmed, so I'm kind of guessing here, that the Hawks have an eye on Bogey's minutes. Just an eye. Because he sat for a long time, and I'm not sure that was entirely performance-related. I'm not sure, but we'll see. I think for the last couple weeks here, he's been like under 30 pretty much all the time, which I'm okay with, but being strategic on that might be useful. But I was surprised that he didn't close. He did come back in at the very end of overtime, but he sat too long, and they went with Bay too long. In fact, I would have gone with Forrest over Bay. That's how I felt about Bay's defense in this game, but anyway, it worked out. So I'll zoom to the end here. Trey misses a floater that he usually makes, and I thought he might have been fouled, but that led to Philadelphia scoring on the other end of the floor and leading for the first time in the whole fourth quarter with like 2 minutes to go. Maxey then kind of went at Murray a couple times and beat him back to back. Maxey blew right by him the first time. Then Murray took a pretty bad contested jump shot on offense, and then Maxey had a step back 3. So that sequence, which was really rough for DeJounte, put the Hawks down by 4 with under a minute to go, and that is danger zone time. And then they called timeout and left Bogey on the bench, and I hated that. I really did, but it worked. The Hawks had a good set of the timeout. They got Sixers kind of scrambling in the rotation, and Jalen attacked the corner, and it was a bad foul by Philadelphia, but that worked out well for the Hawks. 3-point play and cut the lead from 4 down to 1. They got a stop. Then the Hawks had a really rough possession, actually, in which they kind of had nothing going, but Quinn called timeout smartly. He ran all the way down the court to call timeout, get the attention of the official, get one in, and then after the timeout, they got Trey going downhill. He gets fouled. 12 seconds to go with a chance to take the lead. Nurse actually challenged the play, which is hilarious. It was a clear foul, but Trey missed the first free throw. So it's weird. The numbers don't look as bad as they might feel. Trey has missed some free throws this year in key moments that are just kind of frustrating for a guy who's as good as he is at the line, but it happened in this game. They dodged it. And I will say, Trey had a very good defensive play on the last possession of the regulation. He timed the double team perfectly, forces a turnover against Maxey, and they get to overtime. So Trey makes up for that in a big way. Overtime, they had a very, very bad, brutal defensive rebound mishap between Bay and Okongwu that led to a 3 by Philadelphia that was kind of like, oh man, they're going to lose this game again. They missed an open shot. They were down 3 with 2.5 minutes to go. And then Trey got blocked on a drive. And I think probably the single biggest missed shot of the game was a 3 by Nick Batum with about 2 minutes to go. And it was, I'm telling you, wide open. And that would have put the Hawks down by 6 with 2 minutes to go. And they could have still won the game, but that would have been brutal, but he missed it. Trey drove down the floor, got to the line. He talked about this after the game. I don't have the audio clip for you to play, but it was a good question by Jalen Johnson about Trey kind of knowing that Maxey had 5 fouls and kind of going right at him at that point in time, which was smart. He got to the line again, fouled Maxey out of the game. He did miss a free throw in that stint as well, and they actually brought Bogey back in right there. I actually wonder if they might have been keeping Bogey away from Maxey a little bit, considering how perfectly parallel that was. But anyway, they got to stop again after that, and Bogey missed a 3, but then Okongwu got an offensive rebound that was big. They found Jalen, who got fouled, made both, and they tied the game, erased that deficit with about a minute to go. Then Jalen Johnson, huge play. So he got the free throws on that play. Then he gets a deflection, leads to a turnover, and then hits a catch-and-shoot 3 with about 40 seconds to go to put the Hawks up by 3. And DeJounte, shouts to him, had a nice drive that I know that Quinn mentioned after the game. He kind of took up, I'll say this now, Quinn started his press conference by talking about Trey and DeJounte in a positive way, even without a question, just wanted to get it out there. But anyway, he mentioned this play in particular about Murray. It was a simple play in some ways, but DeJounte made a good drive. He gave it up to Jalen. It's like, hey, shoot this, and he knocked it down, and that was a huge play. Also, Bogey got guarded in a big way there. That's kind of why you want Bogey on the court. He got flown at by Philadelphia on that play, and then Okongwu blocks a shot on the next possession after a timeout, and they have a chance to put the game away. Kind of a rough possession. It was Murray ISO. I didn't love that, but because after he missed it, Bey actually bullied his way to a rebound, probably fouled somebody. But hey, it worked out well for the Hawks. Got the ball, found Jalen, who got fouled, made both to go up by 5, and that was kind of the end of the game. So Jalen was, by the way, 4-4 in the lineup in overtime. He was so good in the overtime period. He was a huge factor in this game. I know I've said a lot in this little segment, but there was a lot going on. Just to kind of reemphasize, the Hawks' biggest lead, I think, in the last quarter and a half was the very end of the game, the actual final score, because Trey got fouled at the very, very end of the game. But it was never comfortable. I want to stress that. If you don't watch the game, it was very, very tight the entire way through. And again, the Hawks were down with 2 minutes to go. But big plays. Jalen Johnson made a couple big plays. Again, the Murray play, free throws, big from Jalen in the fourth quarter and overtime. And they I won't say they stole one, but they certainly got one that they would not have won all the way through this year. But perhaps they sign up positive things to come for this Hawks team. All right, we'll have more on this game when it comes to player-by-player evaluations. But first, a word from our sponsors on the show. Today's show is sponsored by Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life, but if you don't mind, I'll talk to you for a minute now about preparing for real life. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in a very long time. That's scary stuff for a lot of people, and it would be a helpless feeling if someone in the family of yours or close friend group got sick while a supply chain issue actually kept them, from getting them a life-saving medication that they actually needed. But thankfully, there is Jase Medical. They actually offer the Jase case, which is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses. That includes UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, and many others. And this can happen to any of us and anyone in our families, and you want to be prepared. The place to go is jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter right now. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at the fraction of a regular cost. It's never been important to be prepared than today. And the place to go one more time is jasemedical.com and use promo code LOCKEDON when you get there to get $20 off your order with Jase Medical. One more time, that's jasemedical.com and use the offer code LOCKEDON. All right, and to the player evaluations in this one. I mentioned it before, but 9 guys appeared. Patty Mills played in the first half, not in the second half. Patty was fine. He didn't take a shot, but kind of zeros across the board, 2 fouls. Gave them good effort, I thought, as Quinn mentioned post-game. Not a whole lot else to add there. No Lundy, no Griffin, and the guys who were active. That's a whole different discussion I'll save for another day, but it is what it is. Trent Forrest, good minutes. 19 minutes for Trent, 4 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds, plus 6 in his minutes. I thought he was really good. And obviously, I am predisposed to liking what Trent does on the court. He doesn't have a super high usage, but he's a good ball handler, good decision maker, great, really, really good defender, honestly. And I thought he gave them great minutes. So I liked that they used him. I liked that they leaned on him a little bit heavier in the second half. All of that was good. Bruno Fernando, 8 points, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks for Bruno. That's obviously solid. The one area that was rough for Bruno was that he was 2 of 9 at the free throw line. That's tough. He's better than that usually. He's a career guy, somewhere in the 60s. So he's not a great shooter at the line, but still certainly better than that. But other than that, I thought he was okay. I don't think he was great, but he gave them competent minutes. And as I've said before many times, Bruno as a third center is a good thing to have because you're going to miss some guys sometimes, and Bruno can just kind of pop in there, play backup minutes, and give you a pretty solid performance level. And then Bogey, 15 points on 16 shots. Was 6 of 8 from 2 and 1 of 8 from 3. So a little bit strange there. 4 assists for Bogey, but man, he gets guarded so differently. I know I say it all the time, but I would want to stress that the way he gets guarded helps everybody else. It just does. His gravity is massive. To the starters, again, everybody 15 points or more, including Bogey, of the top 6. Bay probably had the worst night of the 5, I would say. He wasn't awful. 15 points, 10 rebounds. Defensively, just a lot of breakdowns, a lot of backdoor cut stuff that he gave up in this game, and it's kind of been a problem all year long. But again, a big rebound late on the offensive glass, plays physically. It definitely helps them. 106 on threes, but the one that he made was a pretty big one in the fourth quarter. 5 of 10 on twos. So not efficient at all, but certainly not his worst. Okongwu was pretty good. In fact, he was really good for most of the game. 19 points, 11 rebounds, 2 blocks for Onyeka. Did have 5 fouls, but managed to stay in the game. 7 of 10 from the floor, 5 of 5 from 3. Sorry, from the free throw line. Good chemistry with Trae Young in the first quarter. Kind of cooled off after that a little bit. Less impact offensively, but defensively, a couple big plays at the end of the game for sure. And I think it was a good matchup for him against Paul Reed, who's not a huge guy. It kind of helps Okongwu in some ways. I thought he played well in this one. Jalen Johnson. So I'll stop here. Before I tell you anything that Jalen did in this game, I have the audio from Quinn. So Quinn was asked by Lauren Williams of the AJC, who I'm actually going to include the question in this audio clip, kind of about the way that Jalen played overall in this one. So you hear the question from Lauren, and then here's what Quinn had to say about Jalen Johnson.
Throughout this season, we've just seen Jalen's confidence just continue to rise and rise and rise. For him to take that last shot, that 3, just what does it say about his growth and his mindset this season?
I think the important thing about that tonight, the notable thing I should say, is that he didn't have his best game, the other night against Orlando. And, it's something that, we talked about, that he owned that and then let it go. And it's no different than missing a shot. You take the next one, and he knows how much confidence, I have in him, and he could feel tonight his teammates' confidence in him. When DJ makes that pass, he's basically telling him to shoot. And, no hesitation whatsoever, and that's part of becoming, a really good player. And that's what he wants to do. And, I think the thing about Jalen's development is we've all seen things that, his teammates have seen, the coaching staff, you guys, that get you excited. But you also can forget, I don't know how many minutes a game Jalen's played up until this year, but it's not 30. And so he's a young player, and you keep that in mind. And I say that because, him playing the way he did tonight, letting the game come to him, and, playing both ends of the floor and impacting the game in various ways, and then obviously having a chance to knock down an open shot at a big time, obviously.
So yeah, Jalen was pretty good in this one. 25 points for Jalen, obviously excellent there. On 13 shots, he was 5 of 9 from 2, 3 of 4 from 3, and all 6 at the free throw line. He made all 6 of them. Career high, 16 rebounds for Jalen in this game. A career high, 7 assists for Jalen in this game. 2 blocks and a steal. He was just fantastic. He really was. You heard Quinn talk about how he wasn't his best on Sunday. I agree with that. But man, he was really good tonight. What else do you say? He makes a huge impact defensively for them. The night and day difference between when he's on the floor and when he's off the floor defensively right now for the Hawks is pretty big, especially when it's not Okongwu and Capella. If it's not the 2 bigs and it's not Jalen, it's rough. But we saw that in this game: the passing, the rebounding, the finishing around the rim. He was excellent. So awesome performance from Jalen. More of that to come, I'm sure. And then Trae and DeJounte. DeJounte had a pretty solid offensive game: 25 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. He was 3 of 11 actually on twos, which is a little bit strange. But 5-7 from 3. Got to the line 4 times, made all 4. A little bit ISO heavy at times. He's not passing at the highest level right now, I don't think, but I thought he gave them good offense for the most part in this one. And then Trae was hit and miss for sure, not efficient. 28 points on, I believe it was 29 shooting possessions in this one. 5 of 14 from 2, a little bit rough. Didn't have his floater in this game. 2 of 8 from 3. 11 assists. Trey's in a little bit of a shooting slump now. He had that red hot stretch when he was having 30 and 10 every night, basically, where he's making a lot of shots. Last 7 games, so basically from Christmas till now, he's shooting 40% from the field and 17 of 67 from 3, about 25%. So he's kind of due for some positive regression again, but I think he gave them good minutes overall. He was pretty rough in the second quarter, for sure. He was one of the problems there. But other than that, I thought he played well, and I don't want to overstate it, but defensively, he's been buying in. He's been solid. He's been active. He was good in this game a lot of times. He wasn't perfect, but he was active. He was, again, bought in. That's kind of all you could ask for from Trey at this point. So that's it for the game for the most part. I could do a little bit of a riff here on trade stuff. I'm not going to do that a lot, but there was a report from Adrian Wojnarowski actually on Threads today, a little bit strangely, that the Hawks are, quote, open to almost anything at the trade deadline, which is not a huge surprise, but certainly worth noting when it's Woj, saying that, again, basically everyone is available. He did say this is kind of the headliner of the day, that the Hawks have, quote, gone as far as they will probably go on DeJounte Murray's pairing with Trae Young in the backcourt, and they are, quote, talking Murray deals and others throughout the league. Not a huge surprise now if you've been paying attention for a while. What I would say is that the Hawks are looking for DeJounte trades. I would say that DeJounte is not super opposed from what I hear about being traded. We'll have more of that in the future, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. I think it was kind of intentional in some ways that Quinn led his postgame by praising Trae and DeJounte both, and praising their professionalism and praising their teamwork, and that they didn't it was kind of, it felt intentional to me, I'll say that, and talked about how staying together. And yeah, those are all things that every coach wants you to do. I thought it was interesting tonight in particular, but anyway, we'll have more on that later when I have more of a trade focus on the episode and less of a game focus. But trade stuff's out there. I'm getting questions all day, every day about it. I get it. We're 4 weeks away from the deadline. Could there be a trade tomorrow? Sure. Could there be a trade? Could there be nothing for 3 more weeks? Sure. So stay tuned. We'll have full coverage of that. And with all that said, the Hawks play again on Friday and Saturday, back-to-back at home against the Pacers and the Wizards. As a PSA, Friday's game is actually on Peachtree TV locally, and actually not on Valley Sports Southeast locally. The game is also on the CBS affiliate locally in Atlanta if you are a resident. So an over-the-air game there. Also, no Halliburton for the Pacers, which changes everything. Not to go down the rabbit hole too much, but Halliburton is maybe the most I don't want to use the word valuable, reliant player in the whole league for what a team does. They have their whole thing is built around Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana. Being a bad defensive team, being a great offensive team, the way that they operate, it's all Halliburton, and he's not there. So that's not the same team. Kind of similar to the Sixers without Embiid. Embiid is better than Halliburton, but the Hawks dodge a couple of bullets here, playing 2 teams that they've had trouble with in the past at times. Embiid, obviously, a big loss, and then Halliburton again on Friday. So doesn't mean anything's going to be guaranteed. The Hawks could have lost tonight pretty easily, but a better spot than they have had against the Pacers on Friday, and then the Wizards on Saturday. So it's a back-to-back, but it's the Wizards, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, we'll have more on that. I am probably not going to have a show on Saturday, just PSA on that ahead of time. I rarely miss a game, usually 1 or 2 per year as far as the auto reactions after the game, but I have some travel this weekend. It's a Saturday. It's a back-to-back. It happens every once in a while. I'll catch up on that game on Monday, but I will have a show on Friday after Hawks Pacers, so stay tuned for all of that. Subscribe, rate, review the podcast on your platform of choice. I really would appreciate that as well. Tell your friends about the show. Follow my work on Patreon at patreon.com/BTRowland. Follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked on Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. I appreciate everybody listening. I apologize for the perhaps rambling episode tonight in some respects, because it is, as I'm recording this podcast, about 1 a.m. because it was an overtime game. I was at the game, all kinds of stuff I had to get through, and audio pulls and edits and all that stuff. So thank you for your patience if you're listening to this podcast late at night. But please enjoy your Friday. I guess your Thursday and your Friday at this point in time as we're recording this podcast. And I'll be back at the very latest after the game on Friday.